Lift your hearts up to the Lord.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Spread the news that He is joy. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Sing in the mountains, sing in the meadows, sing hallelujah, God is joy. Lift your hearts up to the Lord.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Spread the news that He is true.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Sing in the mountains, sing in the meadows, sing hallelujah, God is true. Lift your hearts up to the Lord. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Spread the news that He is love. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Sing in the mountains, sing in the meadows, sing hallelujah, God is love. Sing in the mountains, sing in the meadows, sing hallelujah, God is love.
I'll be reading from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyanandaji. Okay. This one is called The Promise of the Scriptures. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, we read the famous parable of the prodigal son. Jesus tells of the man who took the wealth bestowed on him by his father and squandered it in foreign lands where he fell into evil ways. At last repentant, he returned to his father's home. When his father saw him, he was, Jesus tells us, moved with compassion and ran and fell upon his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Fetch quickly the best robe and put it on him, and give him a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and bring out the fattened calf and kill it. Little bit of non-veg there. And and let us eat and make merry, because this my son was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and is found. And they began to make merry. Small-hearted human beings, identified as they are with their little egos, give exaggerated importance to any slight they receive from others. Thus they imagine God, like them, to be petty, unpardoning, and vindictive. In God's eyes, however, when human beings go astray, there is nothing to forgive. All of us are aspects only of His own self. He who made us resides in us. He is not far away from us in some far-off heaven. His call to us always is to return to our own home within. The way of return is described in the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter. Supreme blessedness is that yogis who had completely calmed his mind, controlled his ego-active tendencies, rajas, and purged himself of desire, thereby attaining oneness with Brahma, the infinite spirit. Thus, through Holy Spirit, Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This story of the prodigal son is one of my favorites in the Bible, one of my favorite stories that Jesus told, and I think it's well loved by many. Certainly, Master used the phrase prodigal son, prodigal children all the time in his writings and in other things. The word prodigal in English means wasteful or spending recklessly and so on. And that's the way in which Jesus meant it, the prodigal son, the wasteful son, the spendthrift son, the reckless boy. But because now when you say the word prodigal, people think prodigal son. Jesus really made that word famous, or the Bible made it famous. Jesus, of course, didn't speak English, but so that when we use the word prodigal, it's really come to mean basically that son who had strayed and then come back. So in a way now its implication also is someone who has wandered away from home and gone in the wrong direction and is now returned or returning. So it has that extra meaning too. And as you know, as Dharmini said, we're entering into the Christmas season, which was very important to Master. Jesus was, of course, one of our founding line of avatars, as you know, that this whole work started when Jesus appeared to Babaji and said, "Let us send a new ray of blessing, a new divine light into the world to help people to find God through meditation and this whole spiritual path, and with Kriya Yoga at its center." And so Yoganandaji was once asked by a visitor, "You call your church the Church of all religions, or the Temple of all religions, but why do you concentrate primarily just on two, Christianity and Hinduism?" And Master gave an answer at that time. At other times, he explained it more. One explanation is that to show that all religions are the same, speak the same truth, it's sufficient to show in depth that two. If you can show that two are at their essence the same, it implies that all, when you drill down to their essence, all true religions, that they have that same essence, that, in fact, a perfect word for it is Sanatan Dharma, eternal truth. And eternal truth is eternal. Means, when did it start? It's eternal. When will it end? It's eternal. The world may change or disappear, but truth can never die. It will just be the same. And so that's one explanation for the Church of all religions, but focusing on these two. But at that time, when the visitor asked this, "Why do you concentrate just on Christianity and Hinduism?" Master said, that was the will of Babaji. That was the wish of Babaji. That's it. I'm just under orders here. You see? And when was that wish expressed? Well, it was first expressed that we know of outwardly when Sri Yukteswar met Babaji at the Kumbh Mela, as described in Autobiography of a Yogi. And Babaji said to Sri Yukteswarji, "Write a book that gives the essence of the truths from Hinduism, the Upanishads, other scriptures, and from the Bible, and show how these two are the same, to help bring the world closer together rather than having it be more and more separate and stray from each side from the other, farther and farther apart." These really are the same truths. We talk sometimes about how the different cultures can help each other, different peoples have something to offer one another, and that's true. Some cultures have specialized in one particular thing, and another culture in another, and so they can share their strengths with each other and gain from the other, sure. But when we speak of the sort of connection of the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Krishna and the teachings of these masters, it's not a question of two interpretations of truth coming together and each offering something to the other. It's the same truth. May be given different emphasis as the masters give throughout the years. Throughout the centuries, different avatars come to, when people stray too far in this direction, the masters say, no, you have to go in this direction. They say, fine, and they go far. in the opposite direction. So then another master comes and says, yes, but actually it's closer to the middle. And then we stray far to the other side. And so they keep coming just to look after us. It's sort of like Divine Mother's preschool. And every now and then a new teacher pokes her head in and says, yes, put the blocks down and you should share. And then leaves and then comes back. And then, a few centuries later, another one peeps the head in and says, you're doing well, but don't forget also to sing and smile. And so this is what the masters are doing for us. So this story of the prodigal son is so touching because the boy was not deserving outwardly, as you might see. If you judge it according to the laws of man, he had broken rules, he had wasted wealth, he had spent it, as it says, in riotous living, living just wildly. And so there was nothing that he had to his name. There was no good deed, you could say, to redeem him. The only thing that made him worthy was not his actions, but was just the fact that he was the son of his father. His father said, "You are my son, who cares what you did? You're back." The context of this story is that the whole sort of thing begins that Jesus was speaking to or giving a talk to low-class people, sinners, it says, and other low-class people, and the religious people of the time, who were called the Pharisees, but they could be called all kinds of things in all ages, that just sort of said, look at this man, he speaks to these unworthy people. Why does he waste his time with them? And you see, this is the attitude that creeps into religion everywhere. That there's a joke told about it, that the head priest of the temple bowed before the altar and said, "Lord, before you I am nothing. I am nothing." And then the assistant priest came and saw this and said, "Lord, I too am nothing. I am nothing." And the sweeper outside was so inspired by this that he also ran up to the altar and said, "Lord, even I am nothing." And the head priest turned to the other priest and said, "Look who thinks he's nothing." Who are you to say you are nothing? I am nothing, okay? And that attitude creeps in everywhere, that my way is the right way. There's a beautiful song by Swami Kriyananda called More Boxes, No Thank You, and I wanted to sing it. We have to get a recording of it, of Swamiji sing it. I couldn't get it together this morning. But he says at one point, basically, I had a little box when my Lord made me, and in that little box I did put a tree, a pony, a teddy bear, a bright green sled, and everything around me that my eyes did see. So it goes on and on. But then he says, but somehow in this box would only fit one school, one family, one country, and one social rule, and certainly one church, for only my way's right. And anyone with other ways is just a fool. Now, having said that, I feel like I should finish the thought of the song. He says, or so I used to think, but now I must confess, at judging fools I wasn't any great success. Truth somehow lived without me, though I called it mine. What box could hold the world? It's just preposterous. He intentionally doesn't finish it with a rhyme just to break out of that box. So you see, it's so common that only my way's right. And so there is great worldliness that can creep into religion, that people can feel that, no, I want to go with the established religion. I want to go with the true fancy renunciation of ego and so on. That's approved of by everybody. You see, it all becomes contradictory because we're all working on getting clear and on knowing the truth. It's not that this is anything surprising, anything shocking, anything scandalous. You can be shocked, but after 1,001 shocks of the same kind, you get used to it. But so the worldly attitudes in religion, we're saying, who is he mixing with such low-class people? I mean, class is judged according to worldly standards, not spiritual standards, so it doesn't even make any sense. However, so what Jesus said to them first was that if you had 100 sheep and 99 of them were safe, but one was lost, wouldn't you run everywhere? And if you got that one back that had strayed, wouldn't you be so thrilled? And he said, in the same way, when one soul returns to heaven, there is much rejoicing, a lost soul, basically. Never mind the 99 souls that are already saved. Now, mind you, when he said the 99 souls that were already saved, he, in the highest sense, he's speaking of the saints. So the saints are made it. They're one with God. And we're all making our way there, as opposed to those of us sitting in this temple are among the 99. And yes, there are wayward people out there lost. And one day they will find, the truth, which is our truth. So refer to the earlier song for that. That's, it creeps in. I was with somebody, with some friends, and we were talking about some people we know who are very good-natured, but were making certain kinds of mistakes. And so we were not speaking sort of critically of them, but basically just saying, well, there it is, and we all have lessons to learn, and so on. But I one of the things I said was, they really don't quite realize what they have, and they're still kind of wandering around, even though they've already found what they need to get free. But they're still kind of half looking. And my friends agreed or didn't agree, I don't know. But then afterwards, I didn't like the feeling that I had in my heart. Because I was saying, no, I wasn't being critical and I wasn't being gossipy. I was just kind of, telling it how it is. But I didn't like the feeling in my heart. And this is, again, our guideline that we have. How do we feel? We can come up with all the words to justify anything. But if the feeling is there's something in there that, no, it wasn't right. Something wasn't right. And I thought, well, what wasn't right? It was, in fact, true. And then I thought, well, maybe I could say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Which, of course, was beautiful when Jesus said it of his persecutors. But I was saying it as, forgive these poor ignorant people, for they know not what they do. I know what I do, of course. It didn't work at all. It was awful. So then I started laughing because I had this thought of the masters saying, and there's Dharmarajan, wandering around, not realizing that he has everything, all that he needs, still trying to find it in other ways. That's what the masters say of all of us, and certainly of me, until we're free. And then I felt better. You see, whenever we try to isolate ourselves or set ourselves up a little bit higher in an egotistical way, we just come crashing down. Because we're all brothers and sisters. We're all children of the same God. Once we have found God, then we may have something to brag about. It's a funny line of P.G. Wodehouse when this earl, who basically earls are one step below the king. So very tenuous connection is that saints are with God. So in this way, earls are, these high-ranked nobility or nobility. And so someone says to an earl, these other people are acting, what was the word? They're acting haughty, thank you. Oh really, you can't approach me. Just like that priest saying, look who thinks he's nothing. That's a haughty, a proud attitude. And so this man says, they're haughty. And the earl says, and what makes them haughty? Are they earls? And he says, no, they aren't earls. Then why the devil are they haughty? Only earls have the right to be haughty. He said, when you've got an earl, you've got something. Earls are hot stuff. And it's the same way. It's like when you have a saint, you've got something. Saints are hot stuff. And the rest of us, we're working on it. But I don't want to give the wrong impression that we should identify with, yes, I am not there yet. Yes, I am lesser. We're all lesser. We're all made mistakes. No, that's too far in the wrong direction. Remember Master's definition of self-realization. In fact, you could say that our whole path, our whole religion, if you want to call it that, though it's just a new expression of the eternal religion, is the name of it is self-realization. That's the name Yoganandaji gave it. I was filling out a a visa application with Nayaswami Haridas, and I said, "What do you want to put for religion?" And he said, "Self-realization." So I said, "Oh, well, I'll put other," and then that was the only option. But then you could fill it in self. Yes, of course. Why didn't I know? In fact, you would think it would occur to me too, the same path. And so, Master didn't define it as we are all fools, we are all sinners trying to find our way back to some kind of purity. That's not right at all. He said self-realization is the knowing in all parts of body, mind, and soul that I am now in possession of the kingdom of God, that I do not have to pray for it to come to me, that God's omnipresence is my omnipresence, and that all I have to do is increase my knowing. That's all we're doing, is we're increasing our knowing that this already is the case. This is already true. And so that is what we're doing, that is who we are. And that's how this father saw his son who had made mistakes, and that's how Jesus was saying, that's how God sees us all. As Dharmini was reading, there's no need for forgiveness. There's no talk of forgiveness. Swamiji was asked once by someone, how do we forgive? He said, I don't really even know how to answer that. He said, what is there to forgive, and who are we to be in a position of forgiving anything? You see, we're all in the same boat together. And so, I forgive you. It's just sort of like, look, it was also our karma that drew that circumstance to us from the other person. It wasn't right. If they did wrong by us, it wasn't right. And if we did wrong by them, it wasn't right. But still, it's all just God making it all work out so perfectly. The way when two people have a difficult interaction, it's just a way to bring healing, an opportunity to heal to both. So, when Jesus also said not only of the sheep, but he said that if a woman has 10 pieces of silver and then loses one in the house, won't she light a lamp and run to every corner trying to find it? Because that one matters. You see? So each one of us matters to Divine Mother. I mean, have you ever seen that a mother has 7 children, and when she gets home, she finds that only 6 have come home, and she says, oh, well, it's most of them. It's what, 80% or something, it's all right. Give or take. Of course not. Each one is precious. And what about the naughty children? Divine Master said that Divine Mother sometimes loves her naughty children more because they have more need of her love, because they're in trouble. And so then after saying those first 2 examples, you see, it's beautiful too how Jesus taught, because he didn't say, God says so and you'd better believe it or you'll go to hell. He said very practical examples, because in those days, sheep were also a measure of someone's wealth. Cows at times have been a measure of people's wealth, and so on. So if you lost one of them, wouldn't you care about that one? If you lost one of your pieces of silver, wouldn't you care? Wouldn't you try to get it back? And, things that people can relate to. This is what the masters do, is they give us things we can relate to. Now he would say, if you had 10 2,000 rupee notes, and if one of those purple notes was hidden away, wouldn't you? Because we don't really use silver. We don't have many sheep. At least I don't have any. But at the time, that's what people dealt with. You see? If one of your apps was accidentally deleted, no, I'm kidding. That's maybe taking it too far. But you see, they bring to us words and examples that we can relate to. Because if they speak just in terms of the divine, we won't be able to understand, or we'll just have to say, wow. But it won't be something that we can say, yes, that's true, I've seen that. And so this story of the prodigal son, on one level, yes, it is of forgiveness, that despite all of his wrongdoing, he was instantly forgiven and said, don't mind all of that. And remember, he didn't come back saying, Appa, I am back, and I'd like some more money now. He came very humbly. The full story is that he basically spent all his money, had a great time, and then suddenly famine came into the land. And so everything that was going well was suddenly taken away. And so he and everyone else in that area were starving. And that is also a symbol of the famine of materialistic living. This is what happens to all of us when we stray too far in thinking that material things will give us our joy, our support, our security, our strength. Because they do for a time. And so whenever you see somebody living high and mighty in a materialistic way and says, look at all this foolish spiritual people who don't have so much, why do you punish yourself? I saw Durga laugh, and it reminded me of Sairam telling the story that someone came up to him and said, I heard you stopped drinking alcohol. What's wrong? You see, because everybody, everyone from time immemorial, when you're, sailing in a direction because the wind is blowing that way, you think, see how fast I can sail. And then as soon as the wind goes sideways, I guess sideways helps, but backwards or stops, suddenly we have no power in our sails. And so there's always famine. There's always the desert of materialistic living. It always withdraws its power. Master said, fame and wealth are like prostitutes, loyal to no one. Loyal to no one. So we all, for a time, can have it, and then it is withdrawn. That's just the way it is. Master also said, Satan is consistent in only one thing. He always breaks his promises. It's beautiful. So if somebody breaks their promise to you, or something disappoints you outwardly, just say, good job, Maya. You are doing your job just as usual, reminding me that this world is not my home. And no matter what the disappointment is, human love is only just a faint reflection of God's love. That's the love to seek. So, the boy, the son, the prodigal son, was, when famine came to the land, was starving, and he was eating, as it says, the husks. They were all kind of eating, and I don't know, husks of what? Was it husks of rice or something, or husks of grain? But husks of anything isn't that appetizing. You can think of it as potato peels or something, just kind of, I'd rather have the potato, please, but no, all there was these husks. And he thought to himself, it says, that even the pigs in my father's farm eat husks, and even the servants in my father's home, farm, world, whatever, campus, they eat better than this. And so he went back to his father and basically said, let me come not as thy son, but just as thy employee. I'm not deserving to be thy son. All I'm asking for is a job to work somewhere in the farm, just so I can have enough food to eat. That's all. He came very humbly. And his father didn't say, well, you can start there and work your way up. No, he said, you're my son. Come back home. So that sense of we can identify with the Son, realizing that Divine Mother forgives us everything. And there's nothing even really to forgive. If you say to a child, 7 plus 8, and they say 14, you say, it's 15, but I forgive you. Doesn't make any sense. They're learning. This is how we learn. This is how we grow. You've heard the joke Jyotishji told, that when a wise man was asked, where did he get his good judgment from? He said, experience. And the boy said, how do you get experience? He said, bad judgment. That's how we learn. Isn't it true that sometimes a big mistake you've made, it gets so burned into the nerves, into the heart, that you try never to make that mistake again? And I mean a real mistake. I don't mean like, yes, I never will trust anyone again. That's not what I'm talking about. Other kinds of mistakes. I spoke when I was irritated and I should have held it back, but I just said, doesn't matter. Ha! And then now we aren't friends anymore. And so if only I could have just, why did I have to say that? And so on. Let me be careful next time. And hopefully it can be worked out with so-and-so. That's in this fantasy story. But unfortunately, it's not a fantasy. It happens all too often. Master said the mouth is like a gun and the words are like bullets. And in an instant, they can destroy a friendship that has taken years, decades to build. So we do have to be careful. So forgiveness on one level, yes, there is nothing to forgive, sure. But we can also identify with the son who has returned home. You see, the story ends with him home, not with him out there in the desert, not with him thinking to go back, not with him clawing his way back, and not with him just arriving and going, "Hi, what are you going to say?" No, he's accepted, he's back. You've heard her pull the robe and put it on him, get him the ring, bring the roast dosa and feed it to everyone. We often give the sanitized version of that story. Bring out the extra ghee and slather it on the dosa, for this is my son who was lost and is now found. And so we can also identify with the Father. That if someone has done something wrong and they come to us for forgiveness, we just say, what is there to forgive? And if they don't come to us for forgiveness and instead insist that they were right the whole time, you just say, Om Guru, Om Swaha, I stand by the truth. I know what's true for me, and I'm not worried. Again, how many things? Swamiji said, why worry if someone else is wrong? He said, you're probably wrong 50, and I thought he was going to say 50% of the time, but he said 50 times a day. I thought, 50 times a day? I mean, I might be sort of half wrong once a day. No, 50 times a day. It's like until we're one in God, then there's something off a little bit or a lot. And it isn't, again, to emphasize our wrongness. It's trying to not worry about us having outward perfection or need to be perfect enough in order to be approved of, to be cared about, to be loved, to deserve it because we have shown it by our right understanding, our right actions, that we're good enough. We're good enough already. It doesn't mean we're one with God. That's the final good enough, sure. But still, we're good enough. We're close. Swamiji even said that anyone seeking seriously on the spiritual path can rightly be called a saint. A saint in the making, perhaps, if you like, if you can't go all the way. But even then, a saint, somebody trying to live for God. It's a beautiful thing. And anyone, trying to find happiness in other ways, just as Swamiji said, they're all seeking bliss. Some in this way, some in that way, but they're all seeking the same thing you want. If somebody even hurts us, they're just trying to find joy through hurting us. Why? Well, maybe what we said threatens them. You could say, yes, but I don't say anything, and still they try to hurt me. Well, sometimes as a devotee, your light threatens other people. There is some line of somebody or others that says something like, small-minded people cannot endure the light, being themselves obscure. That when you have a bright light, you say, hey, that looks brighter than my light. And it doesn't make me look good. When we're all sort of low light, it's fine. But who is this bright light? Let's put it out. That's how Jesus' story ended too on the world. They didn't say, thank you for showing us how much we need to learn. They said, we are going to take you out. And he said, fine, but I will resurrect myself. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will build it up again. It's really inspiring. Again, that's the end of his story, the resurrection. So often it's yes, and then they killed him. But that isn't how the story ended. That's not an exciting story. And so again, we should identify with the son, the child, who has returned home. We can identify with the father, who is patient and loving and doesn't just disregards. In that way, really, in some ways you could say the father was acting more like Divine Mother, that he was forgiving everything, he was patient and all these things. So that was sort of a motherly aspect, though for us we need to balance all things in ourselves. But even more than this, because even though these are good attitudes to hold, there's much more to God's kingdom, and there's much more to us as his children than just being accepted, being loved, and being encouraged on our way home. Or rather, I could say, what does it look like when we do arrive home? because we talk about that. Let me bring us home. Free us in this lifetime. I want to be with you. I want to find God. I want to be self-realized. But what does that look like? We know somehow it's the happy ending. Although one saint said, I found that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is just the beginning. Something to meditate on. But what even does that mean, Nirvikalpa Samadhi? This was Master's description of an experience in cosmic consciousness. He said, skipping the whole first part of the story, Sri Yukteswar struck gently on my chest above the heart. My body became immovably rooted. Breath was drawn out of my lungs as if by some huge magnet. Soul and mind instantly lost their physical bondage and streamed out like a fluid piercing light from my every pore. The flesh was as though dead, yet in my intense awareness I knew that never before had I been fully alive. My sense of identity was no longer narrowly confined to the body, but embraced the circumambient atoms. People on distant streets seemed to be moving gently over my own remote periphery. The roots of plants and trees appeared through a dim transparency of the soil. I discerned the inward flow of their sap. The whole vicinity lay bare before me. My ordinary frontal vision was now changed to a vast spherical sight, simultaneously all perceptive. Through the back of my head, I saw men strolling far down Raighat Lane, and noticed also a white cow who was leisurely approaching. When she reached the space in front of the open ashram gate, I observed her with my two physical eyes. As she passed by, behind the brick wall, I saw her clearly still. All objects within my panoramic gaze trembled and vibrated like quick motion pictures. My body, Master's, the pillared courtyard, the furniture and floor, the trees and sunshine, occasionally became violently agitated until all melted into a luminescent sea, even as sugar crystals thrown into a glass of water dissolve after being shaken. The unifying light alternated with materializations of form and metamorphoses revealing the law of cause and effect in creation. An oceanic joy broke upon calmless, endless shores of my soul. The Spirit of God, I realized, is exhaustless bliss. His body is countless tissues of light. A swelling glory within me began to envelop towns, continents, the earth, solar and stellar systems, tenuous nebulae, and floating universes. The entire cosmos, gently luminous, like a city seen afar at night, glimmered within the infinitude of my being. The sharply etched global outlines faded somewhat at the farthest edges. There I could see a mellow radiance, ever undiminished. It was indescribably subtle. The planetary pictures were formed of a grosser light. The divine dispersion of rays poured from an eternal source, blazing into galaxies, transfigured with ineffable auras. Again and again I saw the creative beams condense into constellations, then resolve into sheets of transparent flame. By rhythmic reversion, sextillion worlds passed into diaphanous luster. Fire became firmament. I cognized the center of the Empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my heart. Irradiating splendor issued from my nucleus to every part of the universal structure. Blissful Amrita, the nectar of immortality, pulsed through me with a quicksilver-like fluidity. The creative voice of God I heard resounding as Om, the vibration of the cosmic motor. Suddenly, the breath returned to my lungs. With a disappointment almost unbearable, I realized that my infinite immensity was lost. Once more I was limited to the humiliating cage of a body, not easily accommodative to the spirit. Like a prodigal child, I had run away from my macrocosmic home and imprisoned myself in a narrow microcosm. God bless you.